Hi, I'm Bob Orr, and this is Washington Unplugged. Well, you can say it's high drama in Washington as Senate Democrats are still racing the holiday clock in an effort to approve a health care reform bill. At the moment, the magical 60th vote they need for passage remains elusive, so health care reform remains very much in doubt. And remember, even if the Senate passes its bill, the whole thing still has to go to a conference, and liberals in the House are not very happy, to say the least. It's a lot to kick around today. And joining us to discuss this is our political director, Steve Chaggaris, at the desk. And over at the White House out in the cold is our veteran White House correspondent, Mark Knoller. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Bob.
Steve, let's start with you. So where are we here? The clock is winding down. I know Senator Ben Nelson still is not happy, yet the liberals in the Senate say they can get 60 votes. Can they?
Well, we're waiting for Senator Ben Nelson to see what he's going to do. Abortion is holding this up with him. That's his big issue. Senator Reid wants to get this done by Christmas. We're now 8 days away from Christmas, and they need to get this ball rolling by Saturday in order to get the legislation moved to get it voted on by Christmas. And we're still waiting on Ben Nelson. So
now the Republicans so far have been in lockstep. There's not a single Republican vote for this. They've employed all kinds of stalling tactics. They say they may employ some more. What's the chance Harry Reid could pick off a Republican, though, like, say, Olympia Snowe?
They still are hoping that either somebody like Olympia Snowe or somebody like Susan Collins, also from Maine, maybe would vote for it. But right now, they're saying, the Republicans are saying all 40 are going to vote against it, and that's why they're really focusing on Ben Nelson, get that 60th Democrat.
So Joe Lieberman apparently is in line now, but Nelson's still holding out?
Correct.
But let's bring in Mark now. Mark, it still seems there are a lot of people, the liberals especially, who are not very happy with all the trade-offs that are taking place just to get something out there. What's the White House view on this? Do they think it'll get done?
Well, the White House, what is undeniable is that the White House and President Obama thought this would be a lot easier. I mean, remember at the beginning of the year, they thought he would have a health care bill to sign on his desk by August. Well, here it is, the back end of December, and he's still struggling just to get a bill through the Senate. So this has been a lot harder than they thought. President Obama really miscalculated on the ease in which he would be able to get a health care bill through. He was still reveling in the glory of his election victory a year ago, and it certainly didn't pay off in the kind of support that he needed in order to get a health care bill through. The president has not taken the firm stands that some liberal Democrats were looking for him to take. He has made concessions principally on the public option. He did not dig in his heels and said, we're going to have a public option no matter what. And some liberal progressive Democrats are really upset with him about that. So President Obama is getting it from both sides. All the Republicans united in opposition to health care reform, and even some Democrats who are feeling that he didn't deliver what he promised.
And let me just ask you this. I mean, the liberals have been particularly noisy lately with their dislike of this. I think it was Howard Dean, the former governor, former candidate, who came out and said, let's just forget the whole thing. Let's scrap the Senate bill. That can't make the White House happy at all.
Well, the White House is hoping that Howard Dean goes away. It is certainly not helpful for a former Democratic National Committee chairman to be out there saying that President Obama's health care bill is bad, it's full of giveaways, and that if he were a Democrat, he wouldn't support it, if he were a Democratic senator. So it's certainly embarrassing for the White House. They are trying to discredit Howard Dean, saying that he's wrong on the facts, but nevertheless, he's out there on radio and television and in the newspapers making the case that the health care bill is not worth passing.
All right, Steve, the public option in the Senate bill is out. The Medicare buy-in, the compromise, that's gone. The liberals are saying, what else are you going to throw out with the bathwater? And is it just now a game of just try to get something?
That's what at least the Senate liberals are saying. Let's just get a bill out of the Senate. Let's get a framework. Let's get this thing to committee, and then we'll see what we can add back into it. Keep in mind, the House passed a bill that does have a public option in it. So that's going to still be debated. It's not just because the Senate passes a bill without a public option doesn't mean the idea is dead. That fight's still going to happen next month when they go to conference.
Yeah, but it raises all kinds of questions. How can that be reconciled? I mean, these are two very, very disparate ideas.
Well, and that's what we're going to be looking for. I mean, you're going to have the liberals still arguing for a public option, knowing that that's not going to pass in the Senate and actually may have trouble passing in the House again. So the big fight going into the conference is the public option going to stay? And if it does, how does that get passed? You're already hearing Nancy Pelosi hinting yesterday that she actually might be okay with a bill that comes out of conference that doesn't have a public option. And can you imagine if you're hearing the liberals complaining now, what that's going to sound like if that's the case after the conference?
You know, you mentioned Nancy Pelosi, Mark. I meant to ask you this, so let me ask you now. Speaker Pelosi also, in saying, yeah, maybe I could live with a bill without a public option, said, you know what, when it comes to troops and funding this new surge, I'm not going to carry the president's water here. It seems like yet another hit from the left.
Indeed it is. I asked spokesman Robert Gibbs about that today, and he's cutting Speaker Pelosi a lot of slack. He's not saying that as Speaker, as the #1 Democrat in Congress, she needs to back the president. He's saying, look, there are members of Congress who have different constituencies, different points of view, and so if she's not able to lead the fight in Congress to get President Obama the backing he needs for the surge in more troops to Afghanistan, then he's willing to let her go her own way, and he'll fight for it on his own. But it certainly can't be good news, and it certainly is not the kind of support a president seeks from the top party member in Congress.
And I think, just to be clear, there's a recognition by everybody that if this health care initiative, which is the president's #1 domestic initiative, if that's not pretty much done by the end of this year, 2010 being an election year, that's just not going to happen then, right?
You know, senior aides here are saying it's now or never. But what we have found about Barack Obama, especially from looking at the way he conducted his campaign, he doesn't easily give up. So if it's not done this year, I think he'll continue to try to get it next year, even though it's a midterm election year, and it'll be even more difficult next year than this year. So it doesn't look as though he'll give up, but he certainly would like to get a Senate bill passed before Christmas. He said just yesterday that he's confident he will. He calls it the most important piece of domestic legislation since Social Security. And what we know about Barack Obama is he doesn't give up easily.
You know, Mark, you've been a watcher of presidents for a long time, and you have a great sense of reading them. In the 60 Minutes interview, the president seemed a little piqued. He was upset with some of the questions. What is his mood? How do you sense he's taking this? Is this getting to him?
Without a question, it is. But he's determined not to give up. He's determined to see it through, and he's determined to fight as hard as he can. But remember, look, it's not as though he doesn't want a public option. He would love one. But he wants to get a bill through that you can build on later, and he wants to deliver on his #1 domestic agenda promise to get health care reform enacted. So if he has to give in, make concessions, he's willing to do it, even if it puts off some members of his own party.
All right, Mark, thanks very much. Steve, one last point with you. So the president has a lot on the line here. Mm-hmm. This is his chief domestic initiative. But beginning in 2010, you've got every member of Congress has to face the voters in 10 months. Mm-hmm. So are they more concerned with what pressure they're getting from the White House, or are they more concerned with pressures from their home district?
Absolutely, from their home districts. I mean, I think that's what you're seeing here is there's 535 members of Congress, 435 in the House that are all running for re-election next year. They're worried about what's going to happen back at home. And you've got these liberals who are out there saying, we got President Obama elected because he said he wanted a public option. And you hear them fighting about the public option. And if they don't get it, the thing that the president has to worry about is these people not being excited about voting in 2010. And if they're going to hold on to the majority in Congress, they've got to get the base out, and they've got to get the liberals out to vote. And if they're not going to do that, then they could be in trouble next year.
Tough time for the president and for Congress, but it's great for political watchers. It's a great season for that.
Always fun.
Steve Chaggaris, thanks very much. Mark Knoller, again, as always, thanks very much to you as well. And thanks to all of you for watching Washington Unplugged. Find us here every weekday at cbsnews.com at 12:30. I'm Bob Orr. Have a great day.